I mean, we are putting ourselves under pressure because the Led 4 review has got to be better than the last one.
I realised that, yeah. Unfortunately, because the whole point of doing it again is the last one was terrible. It means it has to be a good review.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a good review.
We might have to review it several times.
I wanted to talk about the nonsense associated with the album and the real inspiration for the bits and pieces of it and all that. And I didn't really have time.
Oh, no.
But I've got this book. This is Mick Wall's book. So maybe, I don't know, we'll do something. We'll look at it or something. Because it's a missed opportunity. Mick Wall is all right. He writes good biographies, but and obviously Led Zeppelin biographies have got this problem with being filled with bullshit. This was an opportunity to actually have something with facts, and it does. And it has some good analysis of what this means and stuff. But it's also got bits in italics, which is just made up. It's just crap. Pretending that he knows the inside of Jimmy Page's brain and what he's thinking. I mean, at least it's in italics, so But to me,
opinion.
Okay, so that's what we're doing then.
Let's do Led 4.
Led Zeppelin 4. Here it is. That is the original CD release. Obviously it's supposed to sound terrible, but it's still quite interesting. It's the original CD release before the 94 CDs were released. After the remasters box set was released, but the CD was still the dodgy transfer, which just came from a multi-gen copy. Apparently it's got tape hiss, and it's really quiet, which is interesting. And there it is. That is Led Zeppelin 4. We are doing it, as we said, because I've always said that's our worst review. It actually isn't our worst review, but we won't go there. Because the problem is people are going to go and watch that review now, and it's so bad. Because obviously we sort of clammed up for the first couple of reviews, didn't we?
Actually, yeah, so that would have been our fourth video, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And for some reason, that one particularly, there was... Yeah, it's really bad. So for our 2,000 subscriber
thing
celebration, it's Led Zeppelin 4, isn't it? It's Led Zeppelin 4. It's 4 symbols, untitled. It was a problem when it was released in different formats. I mean, this is called Led Zeppelin. It says Led Zeppelin on it, so it's called Led Zeppelin. What does it say on Spotify? Does it say Led Zeppelin 4?
It says Led Zeppelin 4, yeah.
Oh. They just have 2 albums called Led Zeppelin.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the actual title of the album is Untitled. It is Untitled, the album. It's not called 4 Symbols. Those symbols on the sleeve weren't the name of the album. They were just the symbols of the band on the album. Worst review I've ever done, and that's saying something. It is a huge album. It's their biggest selling, but doesn't have the weight in their catalogue that, Dark Side of the Moon does to Pink Floyd and Paranoid does to Black Sabbath. It's not like the big one, because all their albums have sold lots.
Yeah, it's not like this is why they're famous, is it?
Exactly, yeah. It's certainly the one. It is the introductory album, but and I certainly prefer 3 and Physical Graffiti and Presence. They're the biggest selling act of all time in the US. The reason they don't have that one big album and it's evenly spread is because all those albums are good. They didn't do any bad albums. Maybe. Apart from that one, they only did until it all went pear-shaped and Page was completely lost. They didn't do any bad albums. Plant did say at the time of In Through the Outdoor it wasn't really a Led Zeppelin album because Page wasn't at the helm. He was just there physically because it was a Plant Jones album. It's not really a Led Zeppelin album, and so there you go. It's true, they never made a bad album. The only useful information we got from our original review was about consistency. It's all it's not like Stairway to Heaven overwhelms the album like Achilles,
Bohemian Rhapsody.
exactly, and Achilles, and I mean, Night at the Opera particularly. It's so inconsistent. This is all as good as each other. The songs I prefer to others, but it's all as good as each other. It's all very, very, very good. Released in 1971. It's easy to forget that it's actually so early. I mean, really their first album as a band really was Led Zeppelin 3, and then this was end of 1970. They were writing this, so it wasn't like they'd been there for years and years and years. This was the sort of actually a point of creativity when they could actually focus and get it.
You want me to say things now?
Say things about Led Zeppelin 4.
I think that what I like about this album is Robert Plant still, or I get the impression Robert Plant's still not sure about or not confident in his abilities. Yeah. So the lyrics in Stairway are just completely.
It is just nonsense, yeah.
But he's definitely got a sense of what he wants to achieve. He's got that country sort of thing and that mystical thing going on.
Yeah.
And it does come through quite strongly in some of the songs.
Yeah.
And he probably didn't realise that actually he was getting there. Yeah. He was sort of starting to do what he wanted to do.
Yes.
And he's not quite turned the corner where he's like, oh, this is my thing. He's still fighting for his thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he probably would feel he hasn't had time yet.
Yeah.
But actually, that's the whole thing.
Yeah. And it works really well because, I mean, obviously Jimmy Page writes the music or the theme tune and sings the theme tune.
The main driving force.
He's the main driving force.
He wrote Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah, and it's great. The music's great. I mean, the lyrics are a little bit silly in places, but who cares? You're not really listening to it. It's not like Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah, well,
where you're listening to it and it's sort of you're enjoying it.
Yeah, and from Jimmy Page's perspective, the lyrics are an abstract thing.
Mm-hmm. He doesn't care, does he? Really?
No. I mean, for him, it shouldn't be explicit. It should be left open to interpretation and all that stuff. I think that's really important.
I love it how he says, "Oh, the lyrics on Stairway are fine." Robert Plant's like, "Oh, really embarrassing." When you flip to say like Genesis on The Lamb, the story's shit. Saying that,
Peter Gabriel says, "Well, I didn't get to finish the lyrics, so they finished it off for me. They didn't know what it was about." So.
I thought the story wasn't that good actually. Blah blah blah. But the piano playing is great.
Yeah, and the bits I didn't write, terrible.
Whereas Jimmy Page is sort of, no, it works for me. It's all right. Yeah, no problems there. So yeah, there's a nice balance on. I mean, the other album we're going to review today was 1968.
Yes.
And this is a world. It's only 3 years, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like
the world has changed.
You would,
you
put the two albums. You think these were decades apart,
Yeah.
And this was the biggest thing of the big, and that was the biggest thing of the big back then. They are sort of quite comparable on that front. Because at this point, this is pop music.
Mm.
We love that, don't we?
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? So yeah, it was. It's an awesome album with lots and lots and lots of good songs. And the interesting thing is, having listened to it again this week, weird how my favourite songs have shifted.
Mm.
Yeah, sort of things change, and that's a hallmark of a good album, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Sort of thing as you pull more and more from it. Just So yeah, good album.
See you next week.
I don't know what else to say.
Still looking forward. I mean, yeah, but yeah, and there is a balance here, which isn't elsewhere in the Zeppelin-esqueness. But it's interesting actually the bluesiness. I'll say this and we get Led Zeppelin fans singing, "Oh, well, I play guitar, and I know actually those riffs are blues." I know. It's pentatonic. Shut up. Levee is where the Zepp blues thing is, and apart from that, it's heavy rock. There is more of a push for heavy rock than blues. And that makes it different to the first 3 albums, you know. And there's no Since I've Been Loving You. I mean, there's this argument that Led Zeppelin so rarely repeated themselves, apart from T for One. But that's a big change from the first 3 albums. I mean, it opens with 2 heavy rock songs. And it's that and the folk on this one. So, in that sense, it's not as diverse as some other albums. It's not as cultured in its influences as particularly 3. Whereas this is, Battle of Evermore, it's inspired by a couple of different things in the lyrics, but the folkiness of Battle of Evermore is a much more superficial thing. It's not someone, he hasn't gone and found this obscure song from 1896 or something, you know. And it's, obviously there's allusions to Lord of the Rings in there and all that stuff, and it's about the Battle of the Light and Dark. And actually, because he was reading this book on the Scotland Independence Wars, all that stuff is in there as well. But the drums shake the castle walls and the ring wraiths ride in black is Lord of the Rings, isn't it? It's Helm's Deep and all that. But yeah, like you said, you like different songs as you get older. And when I first, this is one of the very first rock albums I ever heard. I think it was Dehumanizer. No, I'm lying, actually. I don't know whether I even want to say this. In terms of rock albums I actually had, so not my parents playing, Transformers the movie soundtrack from 1986 was my introduction to rock music, really. And Status Quo, In the Army Now. When I was about 8 or 9, so a few years later, I think I dug up the Transformers movie soundtrack again, and it wore thin very quickly. And then I found Dehumanizer by Black Sabbath, and then Led Zeppelin 4 on tape. But yeah, so obviously at the time I liked Stairway to Heaven, and I liked When the Levee Breaks. I think my favourite song on there is probably Battle of Evermore. That has the things I like in it, and interestingly rock and roll. And when I was younger, Four Sticks and Going to California seemed really boring, and now I think particularly Four Sticks I particularly like, because there's something interesting going on there. That Four Sticks is it has a particular influence from something I can't remember. Okay, I can't remember, but there's some influence, traditional Indian music or something, which is why it's a funny time signature. And obviously the thing was when John Bonham tried it with using 4 drumsticks, made a particular sound, and it's just really interesting. There's a Henry Rollins cover version of 4 Sticks, and it's literally like, oh! And he doesn't say it's in my head. He says, "I shave my head," because he did. But it's the consistency. It's all very good. Never particularly been a fan of Misty Mountain Hop, which is actually I didn't know this. It's actually about the riots in 1968. Somewhere, walking in the park just the other day, was where this happened. And he's forget this. Pack my bags for the Misty Mountain. I'm going to go off to Hobbit Land. I think that's what it is. So it's a proper hippie thing. But meh. That's the meh one for me. But it's really popular, and
I was actually disappointed by Stairway to Heaven
when you originally heard it.
Yeah, because it was sort of built up as this ubiquitous thing. No stairway, denied. And when you actually listen to it, it's like, well, you expect it to stand out from the rest of the album, like Bohemian Rhapsody or something like that.
Yes,
it doesn't really.
Yeah, but that's a testament to how good the rest of the album is. And Stairway to Heaven is amazing and is fantastic, and the fact that the sliding tempo is purely done through feel. They just played it, and live they just played it, and it just gets faster. And you hear cover bands doing it, and either they play the entire song slow, which is really depressing, or they play the entire thing fast, or they just speed up when at the electric bit. It is fascinating how fans of different bands have different characteristics, and Pink Floyd fans are defined by how angry they are. Either they're angry at Waters or Gilmour, to the point where they have to make up stuff to justify it. Jethro Tull fans Jesus, what's wrong with them? That's nutters. Yes, fans are already negative. This is terrible. This is why can't he play anymore, etc. That was a train wreck, and it wasn't. It was just a bit. And Led Zeppelin fans, the word really applies, particularly to Led Zeppelin fans. I think they are fanatical. They think everything they did is perfect. This album is perfect. A lot of that is Jimmy Page's production, but the fanatical fans think that even the terrible drunken live stuff is perfect, which is really funny. And yet all the albums up to, including Presence, I think they're perfect. That's what you should listen to for Led Zeppelin, not the live stuff. And don't get me wrong, I listen to loads of live Zepp, but I wouldn't play it to anyone else. It's not that good. If the fans had their way, the stuff that would be released would be so embarrassing. So I think we're going to do this, and I don't think you're going to like this. I don't think you wanted to do this, but I think this is. I'm going to link this. That's right. It's Stairway to Heaven in Berlin, 1980. We're not going to listen to the whole song because we'll be sick. And it's 15 minutes long. You think, wow, extended. It's going to be so good. So we're going to have a bit of it. We're not going to listen to the whole thing because it'll hurt our face. But listen along with us. So, at the moment, it just sounds like Stairway. It's all fine. I think Plant by this point had learnt how to temper his voice and not knacker it out. But he'd lost his mojo. For understandable reasons. So, Plant's not the problem, although for some of it sounds some of the tour sounds kind of terrible. Of course, John Bonham was in a terrible state. I think he collapsed at one show, and I think it's kind of been airbrushed a bit out of history, but yeah, he wasn't right either. And neither was Jimmy Page, which in 1980 is the problem.
It does sound a bit. Has this been tweaked?
No.
Sounds like a record player slipping belt or something.
Well, he's okay, isn't he? At this point, okay, he's okay. He's got a bit of reverb on there to brush over the edges a bit, so it's all acceptable. He's taking it slowly, and it's but we're a bit more dodgy. But we're 6-7 minutes in now of the 15-minute video. Let's go forward a bit. 10 minutes. When you first got out of bed and you're just sort of hobbling around, you kind of, hello, good morning. It's like that. Yeah.
Oh God, this is painful.
Still going.
The drumming's alright.
Yeah, he's fine on this one. Yeah. It's probably because at the end of the tour he was glad to be through it. There we go. That's the last Stairway. And then, okay, you contrast. Oh, it's live, and whatever. Lots of things were wrong and they were in a mess and all that. But the solo on Stairway to Heaven on this album is perfection. He couldn't get it right when they were recording, and he waited until they were mixing and did it straight into the board. And he just winged it. He just played it. He didn't play it on the Les Paul. He played it on the Telecaster. It doesn't sound like a Telecaster. That's really interesting. And he certainly didn't. Obviously, live he had to use the Gibson, the twin neck. But that solo is perfect. I think there's a wrong note in there. I think that's an open string. I think it's actually the wrong note, and it's
controversial.
It's just perfect. That for me, that and Achilles' Last Stand are actually why Jimmy Page is not a terrible guitarist. He's a fantastic guitarist.
I love the way you say that, as if everyone thinks Jimmy Page is a shit guitarist. But actually, I know.
He's actually really good, actually. But that's not writing in that sense, and it's not the production and all the other stuff and the amazing construction of stuff. That is guitar playing, because it was spontaneous. He just did it, and it's wonderful. You know, I mean, in a way, it is a shame that the lyrics are nonsense, because they are. They're written by Robert Plant, you know, and it doesn't help that the fans are so ridiculous. When John Paul Jones got asked, "Did you feel an aura when you first played the song live?" And I've heard the bootleg of it was in Belfast, and you can't hear it because of all these Irish voices talking. So no one was even listening. So no. And John Paul Jones said, "Yeah, there's the knock at the door, and three wise men were there, and said, there's a star up above. Are you writing Stairway to Heaven?" I mean, for God's sake. So the sky high rhetoric, which is kind of gone. I think it's past with Led Zeppelin. Now everyone just knows they're a very good band.
Yeah, because it wasn't always the case, was it? I mean, they got forgotten basically.
Yeah,
in the 90s, you know.
80s and 90s, or 80s and first half of 90s, and that switched around hugely. And you know, people say that it's hard to understand how people felt about Led Zeppelin in 1980. Nobody cared anymore, you know. So it wasn't, and then by 15 years later, you know, a journalist would do anything to get the chance to, and have a 1 minute interview with Jimmy Page would be like, oh. But it is fascinating how Jimmy Page sort of destroyed his own muse, sort of burnt himself out creatively to do it. That really, really natural approach to doing it, which is it's not meticulous and it's not planned out, and yet the way the albums are produced is so sort of soft and perfected to hide the really noisy, crunchy nature of the band that you don't hear on the albums. Hearing them live is a different thing. But it's interesting. I mean, they printed the lyrics to Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, I was just looking at that.
He chose this font specially. He found something somewhere, and he got someone to actually make an entire font out of it because he only had a few letters, which surprises me. I don't know. I mean, maybe in the modern world we're all sort of more font literate, but it's a bit of a naff font, really, isn't it? I mean, it's, you know, and I think Jimmy Page heard things in the lyrics and thought, that's, you know, he likes the ambiguity of what is it about? Is there some sort of criticism of Christianity at the start? There isn't, of course, at all, but is there?
No, what it was is if you play it backwards, it says Satan is Lord.
Yeah, that's what it says. Yeah.
And he's a Satanist, so that's what it was.
Obviously a Satanist, yeah. If you're an idiot, you think he's a Satanist. I mean, you'd have to have a willful ignorance of the world to think he was actually a Satanist. Worship Satan. But I mean, the stuff about the Piper is, again, there's a link between Page's occult stuff, and I think it was an accident. I think Plant just wrote a load of crap, and Page was like, okay,
like it.
Yeah, do sing more about that Piper guy. And of course, you've got the man, the light bearer. There he is. I don't know what on the original record if you've got the famous poster with the lyrics and the man. And you've even got the village at the bottom. I think you can see the guy climbing the rocks, which he did explicitly in Song Remains the Same, which may have been a mistake. The Hermit is the tarot card, and the Hermit is Aleister Crowley or something. I don't know. Who is obviously this guy, you know, and he's using the natural order. Isn't he? He takes from the land and gives back to the land, and etc., etc. But he's just the photo on a wall in a flat in Ladywood, in Birmingham.
That's amazing, that is.
That's Ladywood. I'd love to know where that actually is, because obviously I'm sure those flats have gone, probably the houses as well. So it will be interesting to know. I bet that bit of green isn't there. Yeah. I bet there's no green in Ladywood now. Black Dog. People make too much out of it being influenced by Oh Well. It's all right, fine, if you want. It's only a stop-start singy bit. It's inspired by that. That's it. It's not. Oh well, they just lifted. Oh well, it's the same. The riff is the same. No, it isn't. It's not the same at all. It's completely different. So that's cool. I much prefer rock and roll. I really like rock and roll. I think they got something exactly right there. Obviously, the John Bonham intro that he wrote, and it was recorded. I think the intro to rock and roll, as well as Levee, was recorded at the bottom of the staircase with the mic dangling down. That's how they got that sound. Four Sticks is brilliant. Going to California is I've read different things about that, actually. I thought it's basically just Robert Plant's Joni Mitchell thing, because they're really into Joni Mitchell, and Robert Plant is Robert Plant. That's the one he always plays at all his concerts. It is funny how Plant does the Peter Gabriel thing, or tries to, of distancing himself from Led Zeppelin as if they're ridiculous and he's far too busy and important. It's funny that, Tony Iommi wanted to get Robert Plant on the original version of his 80s Seventh Star album when it was going to be a solo album. And now you'd think back and think, oh, Robert Plant wouldn't do that. Oh, no. He's too busy playing with Moroccan musicians to do that. But they were mates back in the day. And yet he said, so Plant does this. He distances himself from the band and all that stuff. But he plays all their songs in concert. He always has. I think there was a brief time in the 80s where he didn't, but not for very long. By the end of the 80s, he was playing everything. He was playing Ramble On and all of it. But yeah, so, going to California is cool. And When the Levee Breaks, obviously based on that, I think it's 1920 or 22. I don't know if it's actually traditional from before that. But again, what that song originally was, it's just the lyrics. That driving riff and everything is something else entirely. Maybe Plant should have changed the lyrics. That would have made more sense. Oh yeah, okay. So I'm going to give it 6 egg. It is a 6 egg album,
of course.
I don't like it as much as Dark Side of the Moon. Put it that way, and it's not my favourite Led Zeppelin album actually,
Gosh.
But it is definitely the starter album.
It's a perfect album, isn't it?
Yeah, with Led Zeppelin, you should not get a compilation. They're not Queen.
Yeah.
You should get, if you've never heard Led Zeppelin, yes, you should get that one, definitely. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
On all counts.
Good.
Yeah.
And there we go.
We could put a pin in that one now. I mean, that was probably our longest review ever.
Yay. Okay, right. Thank you very much and goodbye.